Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest issue of Comic Book Gentlemen, the podcast where we use our decades of being giant nerds to discuss the most divisive issues in comic book history. I'm your host, Greg, joined always by my co-host, Dave.
Hello, everybody.
So, Dave, how's it going today? You doing okay?
It is hot.
Just a little bit.
It's very hot. We're not normally used to this.
No. If for all you who don't know, we live in Fort St. John, BC, way up north. Usually it's minus 30.
Yes.
But for some reason today we are recording in a very not ventilated room in plus 30 weather. So if the podcast ends halfway through, it's because we died.
Yes.
Heat stroke.
Yes.
So a couple issues ago, a few issues ago, we did a breakdown of a comic book story. It was Avengers Nowhere at Home. You guys let us know you got a lot of feedback for it. You really enjoyed that breakdown. So we decided, hey, let's do another one. So the one we decided to do today is we're going to do Spider-Man The Hunted. The Hunted. So if you don't know what that is, it came out in 2019. It was a storyline in Amazing Spider-Man. I can't remember. Do you remember who the writer is? Spencer. So, 2019 Spencer. It's known as the spiritual successor to Kraven's Last Hunt,
right? Which
is a world famous Spider-Man story. So
it is the Spider-Man story.
It is the Spider-Man story, according to Dave. So we'll get into that.
Yep.
We're gonna break it down, talk about like the story plot. So we highly recommend go read it if you haven't read it yet, and then come back to the podcast. Or if you're okay with spoilers and you want to know if it's worth reading, keep on listening, and we're gonna break it down for you. So let's start before we get into the details of the storyline. Dave, you're way more of a Spider-Man reader than I am.
I am a Spider-Man.
Yeah, I mean you're literally wearing a Spider-Man shirt right now.
Right now.
I'm a pleb and I'm not wearing a Spider-Man shirt. How dare I? So like my main experience with Spider-Man is like I kind of read for 616 I read the main storyline, so like Kraven's Last Hunt, and like I know all the key plot points of everything else. But I'm mainly an Ultimate Spider-Man guy. So leading up to this storyline, what was happening in the story? Like what was the lead up to it, and what was your impressions of the lead up?
The lead up was interesting because I felt Spencer did a good job of creating a that kind of old school comic book feeling of these two villains, Black Ant and Taskmaster, keep showing up after Spider-Man does in one of his foes, but only if they're of a kind of an animal themed supervillain, and they were taking them. But they didn't really give any indication as to why. They were just showing up and taking them. So it put that little bit of a mystery in, like, oh geez, what is this about? Because it just kept happening and it kept happening, leading up to the story. And there was, up to that point, there was like no sign of Kraven at all.
Oh really? Okay.
So in that sense, it really, again, got my curiosity, obviously, because I always enjoy those stories of, like, who is, the Hobgoblin, or who's the Green Goblin, or who's that person in the shadows directing the, and they would keep it, keep it going. It wouldn't just be like, 2 weeks, or 2 months, and then, it was, surprise, is this guy. They kept it going for a little bit, which just kind of, I felt really kind of built up to, like, okay, what is going on? Until they finally brought the issue in where they brought Kraven to the front and kind of gave you a little bit of backstory as to what was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And then led into the Hunted.
Yeah. I think it's interesting when you talk about comic books nowadays, because I feel like it's one of those things where it's a lot of these characters and stories have been around since like the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's so hard to surprise people nowadays and still keep to the heart of certain characters. Because like I'll agree, like I remember reading some older Spider-Man stuff, like 80s, 90s, and whatnot, and it's like you didn't know half the people that were in it. You didn't know what the heck was going on for such a long time. But then it feels like when you read a lot of the modern stuff, it's like, oh yeah, it's just Green Goblin doing Green Goblin things.
Yeah,
or
we gotta introduce the bad guy within 2 or 3 issues.
Yeah.
Because I'm only doing a 6-issue arc.
Yeah.
And that's it. So I mean, what I found interesting in the fact that it was Kraven, I guess pre the Hunted storyline, was the fact that, like, way back in the day, he was part of the Sinister Six. He was brought in as a character way back. I can't even remember the date. He's a very very old character, very old enemy of Spider-Man, but was always like I always saw him as like a bit of a joke. I did because he's just like okay, I'm basically human, a very fit individual. But really, I hunt things. It was just like there wasn't really a lot to him until they came up with Kraven's Last Hunt, and that was the first time I read a story and I was like, wow, you really dove into who the character was, what he was about. It was an amazing arc that finished with him essentially besting Spider-Man, feeling he was superior. He'd accomplished everything that he possibly could. He'd wrestled gorillas and punched out bears and whatever else he'd done. He was fulfilled. So he killed himself. He committed suicide. Which again, as an adolescent reading something where somebody basically sits in a coffin and blows their head off, I was like, what? This doesn't happen in comic books. So it was just a great overall story, including Vermin. It was awesome. And then years later, they resurrected him.
Yeah. As they are wont to do.
Yeah, which is what they do.
Yeah.
And it was disappointing because it was such a good story and a good ending to this character after you got to understand who he was and what he was about. And then to just go and kind of unravel that with some really, sloppy resurrection thing, it was unfortunate.
Yeah, it takes away from the character, right? Because it's like you had a full-fledged story arc, and then just to kind of wipe it away. Yeah. And again, that's kind of like something that kind of plagues comic books as a medium, just because they constantly keep not repeating, but constantly keep getting repicked up and keep continuing the storyline for so long. But I mean, if you do it right, you can do it right. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, they have moments, but definitely is interesting. So it's definitely going to be hard to talk about The Hunted without talking about Kraven's Last Hunt. Yes. So I know you're a huge fan. I mean, you even mentioned it 2 seconds ago. Yeah. So what is it about Kraven's Last Hunt that you love? That you think it's just it's such a good, well-rounded story, or just what happened?
It was very dark. Mm-hmm. The very first issue where it's kind of setting the table as to what's going to happen, and at the very end, Kraven shoots Spider-Man. Yeah. After drugging him, catching him in a net, and then comes over with basically a rifle and is, Spider-Man's like, hey, Cravey, what are you doing? you don't use guns. You want to beat me to a pulp with your fist, kind of thing, and he just shoots him. Yeah. And that's how the comic ends, with him now Spider-Man in a casket, and he buries him. Yeah. And over the next few issues after that, Kraven takes on the mantle of Spider-Man because he's like, I can be a better Spider-Man than him.
Would you say a superior Spider-Man?
I would say a better than superior Spider-Man. But he takes on that mantle, but it's a very, what made it a good run was just a very deep dive into the psychosis of this character that really, in all honesty, I thought was a big joke for the longest time. Yeah. And then it was just so well written. And then it also involved Vermin, which was the rat human hybrid in the sewers, and then Spider-Man's kind of, if you want to call it a resurrection, he wakes up and he was actually just put into an induced coma, and he has to crawl his way out, which was one of the greatest Amazing Spider-Man comic book covers I've ever seen, which is him just literally crawling out of this grave, and then hunting down Kraven to fight him. He ends up fighting Vermin, and in the meantime, Kraven kind of goes off and is just finally at peace with himself, feeling he's just accomplished everything. He's done what he was put on this planet to do, and ends his life. Yeah. And it was just such a, it was so dark, because the whole thing was it's always raining. It's just a lot of the art was just very, very dark and moody. Yeah. It was just such a change of pace from Spider-Man, wherein you know, the blue and red and everything's laughs and jokes to this like very serious storyline.
Yeah.
So it was the first time I'd ever read a comic book that I felt like, wow, this is what can happen when a true really good writer takes a character who couldn't even be a bit of a joke character and what an amazing piece of work. Like it was just amazing. And
especially for Spider-Man, right? Like I mean you were saying like Spider-Man's usually the jokey guy, and like especially like I mean I think Kraven's Last Hunt came in the early 80s or something like that, or mid 80s.
It was probably in around there.
So like right when comic books are starting to like get more popular for being dark and whatnot. So it's interesting that Spider-Man take that turn, right? So that's so impactful. Like I definitely read. I mean, obviously just because of my age, I didn't read Kraven's Last Hunt till like decades later. Yeah. And like I remember reading it for the first time. I'm like, yeah, this is a good solid story. But in my head, the issue always was like, of course, everybody comes back from the dead. Yeah. Like especially after talking to you about it, and the YouTube channel Comic Tropes is a really good breakdown of Kraven's Last Hunt, and to put in the context of like characters didn't die back then, so to have Spider-Man actually like look like he died for so long was such a big pivotal moment. So like taking that into context, I definitely appreciate Kraven's Last Hunt a lot more, and you could definitely like I for sure agree like it's one of the best Spider-Man story of all time, or it is the best Spider-Man story of all time, right? Like I think the only like I don't know if I would put it as like my favorite comic book story of all, like my top or whatever, but for Spider-Man for sure, at least. But yeah, so like it is interesting then going into the Hunted, because like when did they announce that it was like kind of, I mean, I guess it was kind of implied that it was kind of Kraven's Last Hunt type of situation, because it had Kraven, and two, it's called the Hunted, eh?
Yeah. So I mean, there was it was a kind of a like I said, a kind of a prologue issue that they basically, it was all focused on Kraven and why or what was actually going on with these you know, animal themed villains being captured. And you find out that, you know, Kraven, living in the Savage Land, decides, you know, again, you know, you find out at this point, like, he's really not happy about being brought back. Yeah. Right? Because he feels like he accomplished everything, was over, it was done, and now he's been brought back, and it's like, I didn't want this. Yeah. You know, so he was very much against it. So he decides, he bumps into the High Evolutionary, and the High Evolutionary says, hey, randomly, let's give you 87 clones of yourself. Don't know why 87.
Why 87?
But it was 87. So Kraven, doing, you know, the most Kraven-y thing, says, okay, you know, my sons, you're going to go out into the wilderness, and you're going to hunt each other.
Which is dope as hell.
Yeah, which is crazy. Yeah. It's like the ultimate game of Survivor.
Kill yourself. Yeah.
So basically, at the end of this, one Kraven comes back, the last son of Kraven. Yeah. Who they unfortunately just remain calling him Son of Kraven. It's kind of like he didn't. I was expecting like, oh, give him a name or something, but they didn't give him a name.
Kraven Jr.
Kraven Jr. comes back, and he's now killed all of the other Kravens. Yeah. And he's like the ultimate hunter. And then it kind of fast forwards into where they are, where the Hunted is now starting. So at this point, you still don't even really have a good idea as to like what's happening. So when I first read that, I was like, okay, was like, is he bringing these things to the Savage Land? Is he doing like, is he going to do some kind of crazy, like have his son hunt these? Like I didn't know what was going on.
So then you kind of go into the next issue. So you go back to Spider-Man. Spider-Man's dealing with like, it's crazy that, you know, the Rhino got captured. I feel bad about that. But then he's sick for some reason.
Yeah, he's got the flu.
Oh yeah, he's got the flu. Yeah. Which we'll get into like as we go along. We'll discuss this more. But like I thought that was gonna be a huge plot point, was that he was sick. Yeah. And like that's kind of the reason why he's like not on 100%. And then they kind of just like drop that immediately, and I was like, oh, okay, never mind then. But anyway, so he's like sick, he's not really sure what's going on, but then he finds out that Kurt Connor's son goes missing, and guess what? He's a lizard boy, so that kind of ticks the box for Taskmaster and Black Ant, so they pick him up. Black Cat gets involved, because again, one, she's a animal person, and two, so this is something interesting I found. So a very famous One More Day storyline, or Brand New Day, which I mean I'm sure you love to pieces. Love to pieces. so you find out that she still has the memories of before the Mephisto thing happened
with
Peter Parker.
Yeah, Spider-Man.
Yeah, and that they were like serious, really serious.
Yep.
So she has these crazy memories. So she's feeling all conflicted and whatnot. But then she sees like the lizard kid getting taken. So she's like, I'm kind of an anti-hero. I guess I'll go help. So then you find out that Black Cat and the lizard boy are taken. So Peter Parker's like, I gotta go deal with this. Black Cat messages Peter because she had a thing that Peter gave her before Mephisto. Yep. So he's like, I'm gonna go check her out. And then you end up on the ship where Spider-Man gets captured.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like, oh, that sucks. Then you go I think it's the next issue is he wakes up, he's in the black suit, which immediately is like, whoa,
awesome.
And then you find out, and then you find out he's trapped in Central Park with like every other animal themed person in his rogues gallery, which is pretty crazy. So let's pause there for a second. So like the black suit. Did it like I thought reading it because I read it like a month ago or something like that. I thought like something happened in between the issues that like a big event happened and he just happened to be in his black suit again. But no, it's just because it was an homage to Kraven's Last Hunt, right?
Yes, yeah. So Kraven put him in it because that's the Spider-Man that he hunted. Yeah.
So then, but then the other thing that they do, and then we just said this 2 seconds ago, is he's suddenly not sick anymore.
Yeah.
So like. Again, that's another reason I thought that like maybe something.
It kind of played into the factor like when he showed up looking for Black Cat and then he encountered the last son of Kraven.
Yeah.
And he was kind of like, okay, I'm not 100%, so that kind of gave Kraven a little more of an edge. Like how much of an edge?
Yeah.
I mean, you can lift 10 tons. You're like super agility, and like this guy's like, okay, maybe he's genetically been altered, so he's maybe a little stronger, but for the most part, it was like that. But then they brought in like some mists and shit, which Kraven's often used like drugs, various drugs to kind of mess with Spider-Man. And so then he was on the drugs. So really, was it the drugs or was it because he was on a flu? I don't know. But anyways, he ends up getting his ass handed to him. Yeah. And like you said, he wakes up in Central Park wearing the black suit.
I was more confused about him not being sick anymore than anything else because I was like, they made such a big deal out of it in the first couple issues. I was just like, this must mean something then.
Maybe he gave him some suit effect.
Yeah, so something. Kraven's actually like healing Spider-Man.
Yeah, I want you at your top peak.
He gave him some not Benadryl, Buckley's. Like, just chug this, you'll be fine. So you end up in this crazy situation where, again, you have all the animal-themed people in Central Park locked up, which I'm immediately like, yeah, I'm sold. This is cool as hell. And, like, even the cover where it's Kraven and the background's, like, all their heads, like, on the mantle. Oh, yeah. That's such a good cover.
That was
like,
a great cover.
Like, maybe not, like, coming out of the grave good, but...
Awesome.
Yeah, such a good cover. So, you set up this amazing concept, but then you start, like... The other thing that they throw into this throughout the story is that Kraven ran into a big game hunter while he was in Savage Land, and then he starts coming up with this idea of getting people like him involved with the scenario, which is interesting for Kraven because Kraven usually hates those type of people.
Yeah, and he usually does the hunting.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like he usually doesn't help other people; he does it himself.
See, and that's the part where I was like, okay, so you just put Spider-Man in this place with all of his rogues, all animal themed. I thought this was just going to be like a big battle royal.
Yeah.
Like, it's just going to be a big fight between all these villains and Spider-Man. Yeah. And whatever Kraven was trying to...
Hunger Games style.
Trying to pull off with this. So, it certainly, once they introduced the rich big game hunters, it kind of really changed the dynamic of it. Because it was like, they're not there to beat up on Spider-Man. This is like a completely other thing. Mm-hmm. Like, he's putting them all there as an opportunity for these big game hunters to hunt all of these various animal...
The biggest of game.
Villains, yes.
It's like they say man is the most dangerous game, but guess what? Men with superpowers is even more dangerous.
Dressed up like, armadillos.
Yeah.
are definitely the quintessential top of the
food chain.
The food chain.
Yeah. So then you start finding out that it's not like they're in power suits, but that they're actually like controlling a robot VR style.
Yeah.
So that they enter the fight, they just start popping animal people left and right.
Oh yeah.
It was a dope thing.
And they're just running.
So
like
now,
now it's not even like now it's not even like, hey, let's beat up on Spider-Man. It's just like, run.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have the saddest comic that was so good. Dave put it on his top 5 of last year, which is the Gibbon storyline.
Yes.
So we'll definitely spend a lot of time here with Gibbon. The thing I liked about it, and you've talked about it in depth in our previous podcast, so make sure to go check it out, listeners. But I think I like about it is like it's one of those things where it's like it homages old comics and like kind of talks about old comics, but in a way like old comics are crazy. Yeah. Like old comics make no sense, but then they take an old comic concept and actually like make it make sense.
Yes.
And not only make sense but actually like mean something. Yeah. And I think that was what the most powerful part of it was in my opinion. Yeah. Because like Gibbon, never heard of him in my entire life. Yeah. But now I actually give a shit about Gibbon, which is like impossible to do, you know, so.
Yeah, no, it was, you know, I think they had, I believe it was 3 special issues, which were, it might have been 4 if it was Black Cat first, but there was definitely Lizard, which just followed Kurt Connors and like how he got involved. The Vulture, biggest dick ever.
Which we'll get into.
And then the Gibbon were like supplemental issues. Once they scattered, they followed these characters to give you an idea as to what they were doing while these robot android things were chasing them and hunting them. And in some of the most savage ways, like some of them had like bazookas, and other ones had just knives, and like it was crazy.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the Gibbon storyline was really good. So like what happened was Spider-Man's like, Gibbon, come on, I'll protect you because I'm a decent human being. Yeah. And Gibbon's like, you know, not super evil, so it's not a big deal. But then of course Gibbon's like, but you arrest me all the time. I don't really trust you. Vulture's like, hey, come with me. We're villains. We can be best buds. So then he goes to the Vulture. But then of course the Vulture's like, guess what? I'm an asshole. Trips Gibbon, sacrifices Gibbon to the murder bots, and then bails. So Gibbon gets murdered as hell. Yeah. Super sad issue where you go through his life history and whatnot. Yeah. Like again, just really hammers home that like, you know, these are people getting hunted type of thing. So that's really sad. Then you move on to so Vulture kind of gets an idea of I'm an asshole, but or is this when he meets Arcade? That I think before he groups with everybody, he talks to Arcade. So Arcade is the one that Kraven partnered with in order to get the big game hunters together and to give them the robots and everything and set up Central Park. Yeah. So then you find out that Arcade, of course, is Arcade and is like, hey, you know, I don't actually want to win. I just want to have fun. So, hey...
I watch people die.
I watch people die. So, Vulture, if you kind of help me out here, I'll help you out in the end, right? So then Vulture's like, okay, I'm gonna get everybody together. Then he tells the most like BS story of how Gibbon like sacrificed himself in a valiant rain of fire in order to save Vulture and give Vulture the chance to survive and all the scrap. And Spider-Man's just standing there like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? So
tries to call him on his bullshit, but
all the villains are like, no, you're Spider-Man. Why would we listen to you?
Why would we trust you? But no, it was an interesting choice of characters. Like as far as the like, out of all of those animal themed villains that were running around in there, to make the Vulture kind of the the focal point. Yeah. In the sense of like, again, another character that was like, okay, he's kind of cool. He's got kind of a. There's definitely some history there, but really not like what I would say like an A-list villain. Mm-hmm. And never really had a lot of like super like I'm gonna end the world kind of things. Like he always seemed to have like these very simple kind of like I'm gonna rob a bank kind of things. And it was interesting to make him this person all of a sudden where he was like, I'm the villain messiah. You guys come and join with me. Yeah. And all these villains just kind of, take it, hook, line, and sinker, and join up with them, and like, oh yeah, we're all pro Vulture. We're now gonna, fight with Vulture. Yeah. So yeah, Vulture, like you said, becomes villain messiah. Which I mean, I think it, in my opinion, it was a good choice because one, he's animal themed, so he's gonna be in there. Two, there wasn't that many other people who were in this group that were big enough
to kind of take that focal point and also be smart enough, because I feel like they had a lot of animal themed people, which is great. Like they had, like I said, we had the gibbon, we had the rhino, we had the vulture, but then you had so many random people that I have no idea who they are, like White Rabbit and like Armadillo guy or whatever his name was. Like
they had the rhino, they had the scorpion.
Like the rhino might have been big enough a name to like kind of, but he's not smart enough. That's the problem. Like Vulture's the only one that's
same thing with with the scorpion.
Yeah.
So none of them were that. And what I really appreciated about all this, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
Villains running.
Yeah.
We got separate issues to indicate, follow some individual storylines to get a little bit deeper feeling about what's going on here. You got these rich, big game hunter guys that are running these robots, thinking this is like some kind of like virtual video game kind of thing. And some of the stuff that they were like saying, like, "Oh, look at me, I got a big knife," and just completely hamming it up because it's just a complete joke to them. And then while this is all happening, it all breaks out. It's all going crazy. Up in a tree, sit Taskmaster and Black Ant.
Yeah.
And they're talking about this, and they're like, "Yeah, man, this is kind of messed up," and whatever. And then all of a sudden, Taskmaster just zaps Black Ant and kicks him into the pile because he's like, "You're an animal. You're the last one in the collection. Sorry, buddy. Paid me a lot of money to do that."
Yeah. Like, the second they said Taskmaster and Black Ant were the ones hunting them down, I knew, like, oh yeah, Black Ant's gonna end up in here. Like, he literally has an animal name in his name. How did he not see this coming? Yeah. But yeah, so that's another turn of events. So Spider-Man, he trying to convince the villains, like, I should be in charge. I'm a good guy. But then of course, the villains are like, we hate you. Go away. So Spider-Man off on his own. Then he runs into Black Ant. Because Black Ant's like, hey, I got betrayed. You want to be my friend? So they start talking. Meanwhile, while this is happening, Black Cat and Kurt Connor's son are trapped. And so Black Cat's like, hey, man, I hate kids. Let's make this very clear. I hate kids. And so she's like,
they made it very clear.
But she's like, I'll help you because reasons.
Yeah, because Spider-Man will like me.
Yeah. I'll get some spider ass. Yeah. So then that's happening. Kurt Connors is freaking out because he's like, damn it, my son's dead. And because Spider-Man's not picking up his phone. The clone Kraven is super mad. Yeah. Because he's like, what's happening? Yeah. You're doing the exact opposite.
This should be our legacy to hunt these things, and prove ourselves. Not why are you giving it to these rich assholes who are not even really there.
Yeah.
Hunting, they're hunting virtually,
like the antithesis of Kraven.
Yes,
and like he's just so mad at the real Kraven. Then the other thing you have going on is Mary Jane. Because, I mean, again, this is kind of an homage to Kraven's Last Hunt, because Mary Jane had the same situation where she's like, hey, I'm just hanging out.
Yeah, and waiting for Peter to come home.
Where's Peter? And then she's dancing, but then she's like, no, I don't want to dance. And then she goes to sleep, and then like a weird cockroach guy attacks her.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole other, a whole other podcast.
Thing. But then, I mean, meanwhile, while this is happening, Spider-Man's like, I got to get home because Mary Jane's going to die, because he has a vision about this. So, that's all going on. A lot going on. A lot of moving parts. Next step, what happened is that so Black Ant kind of tells Spider-Man what's the gist is. Yeah. He's like, yeah, these guys are just robots. You can't kill them though because Arcade tricked them, and then if they die in the robot game, they'll die in real life. Yeah. So very Arcade thing to do. And then he also explains that obviously it's a Kraven thing. So it's like we gotta figure this out.
Yeah. Lizard kind of basically turns himself into Taskmaster, hoping to get involved so that he could rescue his son.
Yeah, Taskmaster's feeling a little bit guilty. Because he screwed off with his friend, so he's like, maybe I should care a little bit. So so Lizard finds Taskmaster in the hole in the wall or whatever it's called. Says he poisons him so that he'll do what he says. The other thing that's going on with Lizard right now is he is full lizard. Yes, but he has an inhibitor chip inside him that
prevents him from being
full lizard. Yeah, basically he's lizard body, but he can't go lizard mind, basically. So he's like, hey, Taskmaster, help me get in here so I can save my son. Yeah. He's basically Finding Nemo right now. Yes. Finding Nemo right now. So then their plan was to get Vermin to then give to Kraven, right, or something like that, or am I wrong?
I'm having a hard time remembering. Like, Vermin just basically went from, like, he captured Vermin, and then decides, hey, what if there were more vermin?
Great idea.
Like, let's clone Vermin.
Yeah.
So he starts cloning Vermin. And again,
Arcade does, yeah.
Arcade does. And I really just, like, other than introducing that as, like, an additional, like, threat to some degree, it really didn't...
No.
Like, I didn't understand, like, okay, what the point of that was.
Yeah.
But he did it.
Yeah.
And basically at some point, Spider-Man shows up. He helps because the son of Kraven's found Black Cat, and Kurt Connor's kid. Black Cat's trying to, like, hold her own, but she's really not. Spider-Man shows up. Kind of, they get into a dust up, and it just kind of at the end of that again, it kind of felt like all Black Cat did the entire time was complain about the kid.
Yeah.
Be kind of conflicted and angry, but kind of also, I guess, maybe in love or still have feelings for Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, just epically failed at everything that she was doing through the whole thing, because she's, like, trying to find about this. She gets caught. Then she finds a kid. They escape. Then they almost die at the hands of them. She really just didn't do anything.
No.
And really at no point in the comic did I ever feel like she was, like, really in danger.
Yeah. Because they didn't even throw her into the ring.
No.
Like, it would have made more sense, and it would have been more, like... more intense if it had been like, not only are they captured, but now even the kid lizard is in danger of getting murdered by the murder bots, right?
But they escaped into the park.
Yeah, and then they get endangered by the murder bots only because they, like, escaped.
Yeah.
If they had just stayed where they were, they would have been totally fine, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think I think like the biggest issue is just the fact that she had to deal with the kid.
Yeah.
And the kid was like, I'm not doing anything until my dad's here.
Yeah.
And that just, like, really, like, took out her legs type of thing. Like, there's not much she could do. I mean, she did take a bullet for the kid and, like, was trying her best, but it was definitely the kid that was holding her back type of thing.
Yeah.
And I've heard a lot of people say that, like, Black Cat, especially in King of Black, was really good. So I think it's just one of those things where they kind of were just trying to build her up type of thing. So
yeah, could have been.
But yeah, she really didn't need to be in the story. And I think, like you were saying, I think Vermin also really didn't need to be in the story.
Right.
I think this is my biggest, like, negative of the whole storyline.
Yeah.
Is it, like, forcing Vermin in there felt like it was also forcing Kraven's Last Hunt in there.
Yeah,
and
it was just like, well, who was involved in Kraven's Last Hunt, so we got to get Vermin in there.
Mm-hmm. Like, no other reason. There was no other reason to because what Taskmaster could have done was go like, hey, I caught the lizard. Yeah. I could give you more money. But instead they felt the need to capture Vermin, which was super unnecessary. Like, they could have just easily use the lizard, which they ended up doing anyways. Yeah, so it's
exactly.
What was the point of the Vermin other than the fact that, like, he was in Kraven's Last Hunt, so he has to be in this as well.
Yeah. No, it just, I mean, all of that aside, it really comes down to... Kraven in his craziness he's got the lizard. He's now got Spider-Man again. Mm-hmm. And he's basically trying to make Spider-Man become the ultimate hunter.
Yeah.
By getting him to kill the lizard?
Yeah. Somehow. Well, I think what he was trying to do was, like, Spider-Man has a code, and it's like, I don't kill.
Yeah.
So, like, he basically forced Spider-Man in a situation where it's like, if you don't kill the lizard, he's going to kill other people. Because what happened was, Lizard is forced to take out his inhibitor chip in order to, like, kind of freak out and save his son. Yeah. But then there's the issue of, like, without the inhibitor chip, he's just going to go berserk and kill everybody. Yeah. So Kraven kind of forces Spider-Man, like, hey, if you don't stop the lizard, it's your fault all these people die. Yeah. Which he kind of... I mean... So what's your opinion on this situation? Because, like, this is a very interesting moral situation that they, like, I mean, it's a Batman versus Joker situation. Yeah. So it's a very common philosophical debate in superhero things where it's like, you had the chance to stop Joker, but you didn't, so then he killed 1 million people, so is that your fault? But at the same time, it's one of those things where it's like, But that's the Joker's choice to do that. If I kill the Joker, then I'm also a killer, so then it's the same thing, right? So what's your...
And I'm trying to hold myself to another, a higher moral code. And I think it kind of worked. I mean, obviously it ended up, the way that it played out, it was like, it wasn't your typical, like, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to find another way. And then he finds another way. And then the bad guy goes, you followed my plan. It was like, he didn't do it. And then somehow through that, Kraven gains like a newfound respect for him.
Something like that, yeah. This is where it starts getting a little muddy.
Where he's like, okay, I can respect it because you've been put in the worst possible situation and you're still holding to this moral code that I thought I could break you of and show that you are just the ultimate predator. But it can't. Yeah. It's not going to work.
Yeah. Because, the point of Kraven's Last Hunt was that Kraven believed that Spider-Man was above humans. So that if Kraven could beat Spider-Man, then Kraven's above humans, right? So then it kind of turned into, with The Hunted, that Kraven's just sad. And
Kraven's really sad.
So he's sad, so then he kind of captures Spider-Man, puts him in a situation, try to prove that Spider-Man is also sad. But then Spider-Man proves him wrong. So Kraven's like, okay, good job, kid.
Yeah, good on you.
Good on you, kid.
Now let's fight, and you beat me up.
Yeah. So then...
Again.
Again, yeah. So basically what starts happening is things go bad for Kraven. The villains kind of start fighting back against the big game hunters. The big game hunters start dying because they're getting killed by the arcade machine. Kirk Connors escapes and finds his son. Black Cat's fine. All that stuff. And then I think at the very end... Yeah, basically... Yeah, go ahead.
So basically Spider-Man kind of... They have their go-around, which was, that fight's always good because there's always a... It's not just like a mano, let's just, punch each other out. He always uses, various things to kind of bring Spider-Man onto his level so he can fight him. But it was the end of the fight where he kind of just like, wow, like, after all of this, you're still who you are, and I can't make you become something else. I got a newfound respect for you. Okay, go save everybody. Yeah. So Spider-Man runs off, and then runs into, like, the army of vermin. Yeah. And then meanwhile, Kraven's like, I have to die by the spider. Yeah. And then he kind of goes off, and there's, again, another coffin and a black Spider-Man suit in it. And I was like, okay, what the hell's going on here? And so he decides, or it goes back to Spider-Man fights some vermin. He's trying to help everybody. And then all of a sudden, Spider-Man shows up, and he's fighting the son of Kraven. Yeah. And the son of Kraven just beats the living hell out of him. Yeah. And basically kills him, and then pulls the mask off, and it's actually the original Kraven. Yeah. So with his death, then the shield drops, and everybody's free and can get out. Yeah. And now his son, in the prologue afterwards, his son then cuts his hair, kind of washes himself up of all of his little, markings and tattoos and stuff. And basically becomes
Kraven the Hunter.
The new Kraven the Hunter. Yeah. Which I thought was, like, I hate clones shit. But I thought, you know what? That was much better. Like, I'm glad that it's in that direction that's the new Kraven. Yeah. Than the way they tried to do it, which was like, hey, we're going to hold this weird ritual and we're going to resurrect you. Yeah. It was... Now it's basically his son who's taken up the mantle and running around.
Yeah. So, like, and the thing that we kind of said earlier was the cool part about Kraven's Last Hunt was that it was his last hunt. Yes. And the fact that he was resurrected kind of cheated him of that whole story arc. Yeah. And it cheapened the whole story arc. So I feel like this storyline was definitely like kind of an apology letter of resurrecting Kraven, because even Kraven.
Yeah, see, and that's pretty on point with most of Nick Spencer's work. Is he went back and looked at all these things, and decided, and I'm going to rip Dan Slott here again.
And every issue we have to talk about Dan Slott.
You know, all this stuff that they wrecked of Spider-Man. You know, I understand you got to take things in a different direction every once in a while, but it was just like you didn't do him any justice by destroying everything that made Spider-Man Spider-Man. You know, Spider-Man is a lot about his supporting cast, the people around him. Dan Slott thought that was stupid. You know, he tried to do a whole bunch of weird shit. I'm not going to say it was all bad, but it was just at the end of the day, this is very on point for Spencer because he's just been going through and slowly kind of resetting all of these things so that you can go, okay, Kraven's, you know, gone again, so we're gonna, you know, put that to bed. I thought if it was more just along the lines of like just the Spider-Man versus Kraven, which was I think done for the most part really well in the comic because just the dialogue and the history between the two characters, if they would have just kept it there, it would have been so much better. But bringing in all these other villains and stuff, which seemed really awesome at the beginning, just kind of petered out, and it was just kind of like, oh, they're there?
Yeah.
But who cares?
Yeah, like, I feel like the concept of the Hunted was so cool, and, like, where you could see them possibly going was really amazing. Like, they could have had this huge Hunger Games moment where, like, they have to start killing each other to escape, or they could have had this whole, like, you know, rich assholes are the true villains as opposed to the people who are just, you know, regular villains type of thing, like white collar crime versus blue collar crime.
What if instead of the Kraven going out and you know, hunting the son of Kraven going out and hunting all of his other brothers and killing them, it was all these animals are now put in there, and it's like a great hunt of all these Kravens hunting all these things. Like it could have tied more. I felt like it put it there. But it was just more of like an afterthought thing that was happening in the background. Yeah. That was really not, I felt, tied strong enough into the central focus of the story, which was this relationship between Kraven and Spider-Man.
Yeah. Like, my biggest issue with it is I think the concept was better than the execution. Yeah. Like, I think what happened was they came up with this good idea. They were going to kind of try to fix the issue of again, apologize for resurrecting Kraven after the Kraven's last hunt. But then what happened was they felt too much need to, like, recreate Kraven's last hunt. Yeah. That it muddled what it could have been. Yeah. Because the fact that they felt the need to force Vermin in there was super unnecessary, and the fact that they felt the need to, like, have Spider-Man be sick because he was kind of, you know, during Kraven's last hunt he was messed up in the head from the random drugs, and, like, they felt there was too many points where it was, you could tell it was just like they only had them in there to see, like, guys, look, it's Kraven's last hunt. You love Kraven's last hunt. Look, we're doing it. Yeah. And, like, because they felt so the big need to have that crutch, I feel like it took away from it. Because, like, the Hunted, if it had just been, like, you're trapped in Central Park with all the animal-themed villains, hunt them, was such a cool idea that they could have gone in any direction with. Yeah. That instead they just ended up being Kraven's Last Hunt Part 2. Yeah. And, like, I do agree, like, having the clone... Like, killing Kraven.
It was almost like Kraven's Hunt Part 3.
Yeah.
Really. Because after Kraven had died, this was, again, right around the 90s when they started a new comic by... the title was just Spider-Man, and it was Todd McFarlane. They did a 6-part issue that Todd McFarlane wrote, and he did the art. It was amazing. And it was called Torment. Mm. And it was Calypso, who was... you know, always had this kind of relationship with the Hunter, decided, I'm going to torment Spider-Man for killing my beloved. Okay. So, yeah, she drugs the shit out of him. And then on top of that, she does, you know, some kind of voodoo and gets a hold of the Lizard, who's now running around just mass murdering people. Yeah. And it was, I felt that was a better part deux of the Kraven the Hunt than this. This was like and I don't really blame Spencer because it was just like, you're gonna try and fix this. This is really tough. Yeah. I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. I just felt like there were a lot of things that were kind of set up that just kind of fell to the wayside. Yeah. Is all.
Yeah. Like, you didn't, like, maybe that's the reason they had Lizard in there, because they also wanted to homage that storyline.
Yeah.
But again, like, I feel like that's kind of the issue with modern comics nowadays, is, like, it's fine to pay homage to old storylines, because there's a reason why they're classic and whatnot, but when all you do is just copy them, like, instead of either one, doing your own thing, or two, expanding on the concept to a modern tone, what's the point then, right? Like, you see nowadays, like, they had Civil War 2, which is such a waste of time. They had, like, they're trying to redo the Clone Saga, which is like, why the Clone Saga, you know? And, like, it feels like they're just trying to, like, you know, catch that spark that they had back when they originally did it. But the reason why all those storylines were such big, important storylines, because they were new and they were fresh.
Yeah.
And I feel like because they're trying to just, like, renege the same storyline, it's just like, okay, we're getting old, right? And again, I feel like The Hunted could have been so much more than what it ended up being. Because like you said, the first few comics were so good, and then it just peters off to nothing.
Yeah, it was just like, you, like, oh my god, there's this big thing, and then, oh, it was really just about dealing with this Kraven the Hunter thing and fixing it, basically killing him again.
Yeah, basically. But then at the same time, still having a way to have a new Kraven.
Yeah, but at the same time, reinventing the character.
Yeah.
So
without, like, resurrecting him, you know, which, I mean, like, again, cloning is kind of just cheating, but at least he is someone. So have they used Kraven since this storyline at all? They literally took all that time just to resurrect him. I mean, there's other characters.
It's moved into, because at the very end of the whole thing, you know, the one person that goes to visit him at one point is the Chameleon.
Okay.
At the very end of the whole story arc, who's, you know, related to him in some bizarre, messed up way. They suddenly decided at one point that they were I believe it's stepbrothers or something like that, and it's really, it was kind of stupid.
Yeah.
But basically, it's like ends with, you know, Chameleon kind of like, you know, don't worry, you know, I'm gonna kind of take this to the next level, which is basically where the story arc's gone now, where it's the Chameleon's really been messing with some shit.
Oh yeah.
So that it kind of pours into that. But I mean, overall, I enjoyed it. To your point, I think there was just like so much potential there with like this just big, giant battle royal that, you know, could have taken place. Possibly even like a 4-part mini series outside, just to be like just these villains beating the crap out of each other or something. Like, it just something that just really kind of became this like noise in the background that really didn't,
because we got to get Vermin in on that.
Yeah, and at the end, like, it was like, oh, and I don't know if it was like an attempt to like really build up the Vulture either, but I just felt like I just really felt like that kind of petered out too. Like, I didn't have any newfound respect for the Vulture or any more disdain or hate for him. I just kind of felt like, oh, okay, the Vulture, whatever.
Yeah, he did his thing. You know, his thing. Yeah. And again, the other issue is like there wasn't a lot of stakes to this either. Like, the only person who really died was Gibbon, and they didn't make you feel for Gibbon. Yes. Like, but they had to like make an entire side issue to make you feel. That was
by far the I'm gonna say the best part of that entire thing, just because of the story. Because I read that and I finished it, and I was like, wow, that was impactful. And it was because I think they really touched on like themes that I think anybody can feel growing up, like not being welcome, not being in the group, being picked fun of, feeling like you're different, you know. And then all the different roads that he took, like, I'm gonna be a villain, no, I'm gonna team up with somebody, we're gonna be superheroes, you know. And it just like nothing ever went his way, nothing ever worked. I'm gonna go be in the circus because you know that's the only job I can hold down. It was just really heartfelt, and then just the way he went out was just like so sad. That I genuinely was like, oh wow, that was a good read, like a good tough read. That actually took the comic to my wife and was like, you want to cry? Here, read this. Because it was I thought by far the highlight of that entire series. Yeah, for sure. So any last thoughts about The Hunted, or where does it rank in your Spider-Man storylines? Certainly nowhere near the top. You know, I think there's been obviously Kraven Kraven's Last Hunt was much better. You know, I think obviously the Green Goblin. I mean, I know it was only 2 issues. The Green Goblin and Spider-Man arc, where basically he kills Gwen Stacy, and then he in turn kind of kills himself accidentally. That was, you know, like as far as like the upper echelon of like Spider-Man stories that are like key. Hey, you have to read these. It doesn't even make the list. Yeah. It was just a nice like, hey, thanks for the trip down memory lane. Yeah. Thanks for fixing something that I think a lot of people had problems with, because it was just such a good story and an end to a character that they just went and sloppily resurrected for no reason. You know, so I appreciate Spencer's attempt to go, hey, I'm going to fix this. There were points of it that I enjoyed, but overall it was just kind of like a, you know, I would say like a 6 or 7 out of 10 as far as like
it wasn't
overall,
terrible.
No, it wasn't terrible. Yeah.
And if you're gonna read any issue, like hey, check it out, it's a good time. For sure, read the Gibbon issue. Even if you just read that, it's a really good issue for sure. Yeah. But yeah, we recommend Spider-Man: The Hunted. Just maybe not the greatest thing of all time. So yeah, that kind of wraps up this podcast. If you have any other storylines or anything like that you want us to check out and want to hear our opinion on, feel free to let us know in the comments. But other than that, we'll see y'all next time.
See ya.